Good afternoon, everybody. On today's Backyard Tips and Tricks, we're going to look a little bit more in depth at some of the usage differences between a stick and an edged weapon. And this applies all across the board. Whether you're doing HEMA, whether you're doing FMA, whether you're doing Irish stick fighting, Italian baston, whatever. Doesn't matter. One of the big things in the Filipino martial arts is we talk about the fact that we use the sticks as simulators for edged weapons. But the problem is most people don't train a stick as an edged weapon. We end up taking the stick and training it as an impact weapon. And that's fine, as long as you're honest about what you're doing. I mean, let's face it, a stick is primarily for hitting. We block with sticks, we grapple, we thrust, all the same sort of things you do with a sword, but the final mechanic is different. And I've talked about this in other videos. I've talked about going from a stick mechanic where we strike, and when we strike and stick, we pull through. Now this is a draw cut. Draw cuts are really common in most martial arts forms that use edged weapons. But there's also push cuts. And there's also understanding that the lines we use with a stick, angle 1, angle 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever, they all end up covering the universal lines of motion. But when we use an edged weapon, we need to look a little deeper. We need to extrapolate. We need to think about how we're approaching. If I were to use this in the exact same way I was using a stick, I lose a good portion of the power of this. If I use an impact strike and then draw cut, two big things happen. Number one, this is a very wide motion, and it's relatively easy to counter, especially if you've got good footwork, your parry game's on point. This, the caveman strike, the number 2, the number 3, all of those take a lot of room to accomplish. But one of the advantages we have with edged weapons is that the impact type of striking is not what we're going to base our combative methodology on. Instead, what we're going to look at is entries. In much the same way I might do a split entry in, say, Jeet Kune Do, whatever art you want to call it, we're going to do the same thing with an edged weapon. Now this is still an angle 1. It is still this classic strike, but instead of going through the process of chambering, striking, and cutting, all we're simply looking at is inserting this tip into that angle. So we now go 1. This could have been a thrust through the face. It could also simply be riding this attack so that now we're in this position for angle 1 and we can slice. We can also come in on that angle 2 and slice. So play with these ideas. Play with the idea of placing your blade in the line that you are cutting and then drawing or pushing on that line. I may come in here and get that push cut. I may come in here and get that push cut over the arm. That would slice that arm wide open. And then you've got the return, which would cut through the neck. You can come in low and slice. You can come in and slice. It's much tighter when you think about a blade, when you approach a blade from insert cut than strike and cut. It takes much less time, you're less exposed, your guard's tighter. There's all sorts of advantages to it. And you don't have to worry about blade on blade breaking your weapon, because you're not going slap. You're not edge to edge. You're not back to edge. You are simply using your flat to engage whatever is approaching you. And then you can go to town slicing up your target. It's just something to play with, because we don't always need to cleave through our target. What we might, and what is more strategically beneficial, is to cut our target, get that opening, and then follow it up with that heavy strike that's going to cleave through bone. So we attack muscles, we cut arteries, and then we take that head off. Then we take that leg off. We don't enter into the conflict with attacking with a heavy blow as our primary movement, as our primary way of engaging our target. Now, we're going to be subtle. Cut, cut, then hit. Cut, hit. So, play with these ideas. Look at all of your weapons forms. Sombrata and a hubud are great places to play with this idea. And think about it. Are you training with a stick, or are you training with a sword? There's nothing wrong with either way. You just got to understand what you're doing when you do it. So, y'all have a good one.